My grandparents, Tom and Rachel Still, grew up north of Rogersville. They tried farming and discovered they did better hauling things for the other farmers than they did making anything grow. So they had heard of Kingsport, of course, and been to Kingsport, and decided there were more opportunities for hauling in Kingsport than there were in the country out from Rogersville. So in 1928, they moved their residence to Branch Street in Kingsport and operated Tom Still Transfer out of their home on Branch Street. That presented a few challenges because if you know Branch Street, it's a horseshoe-shaped street, so parking moving vans on Branch Street wasn't exactly an ideal situation. Within a year, perhaps the neighbors encouraged them or the city, but they rented the building on Main Street that's currently occupied by Pappy's Custom Shop and moved the business there, which was a more suitable location to run a trucking company. It operated there from 29 through about 31 or 32, from the best I can tell. They moved their home from Branch Street to the corner of Boone and Winola Streets and proceeded to start building on to the home and built an office area between the home and Boone Street to the side of the actual residence. So they acquired additional property and eventually moved the business to that location, as say in 31 or 32. Initially, they did deliveries for Dobbins Taylor Hardware. We have some old invoices where the delivery of an appliance here in town was $0.25. They also did deliveries from the railroad to businesses and residences in the area. Basically, any hauling they could do at first. They hauled chemicals for Foote Mineral Company out of Saltville, Virginia in the early days as well. But in the mid-30s, they began to concentrate on household goods moving, relocating families, offices, office fixtures, and items that required specialized handling. And that's the direction the business took. In 1941, they started building their big warehouse, which they were very proud of, and had plans for this nice brick and steel 3-story building. The first floor was occupied by Bingham Furniture Company so that they could lease out a portion of the building until they needed it all. And the second and third floors would be used for storage. The land lay such that you could have street access to both the first and second level, so it seemed like a good fit. The only problem was World War II came along and they could no longer get steel to finish the construction. So the 3-story warehouse became a 2-story warehouse, but has served the business well for many years. A new direction the company took during World War II was that they were chosen as one of the prime contractors for relocating families for the project in what is now called Oak Ridge, for the project which we all know now was to make the nuclear bombs. But it was very secretive. They didn't even get correct names for the people they were moving. They were often moved under assumed names from major universities and so forth to Oak Ridge. It presented a challenge because Oak Ridge was built so quickly there were no paved streets, so the trucks tended to get stuck in the mud, and the homes were built to minimize the use of materials during the war. That meant appliances had to go in through windows, and took a lot of creative work to make things work in that situation. But it was a period during which the business grew with that government contract. Also, the business was able to get replacement parts for our trucks because we were involved in a government project when everyone else was scrambling to get replacement parts. After World War II, the 3 children that Tom and Rachel had came into the business. I emphasize my grandmother because even though it was not general practice at the time, she was involved in the business from the very beginning and was always a huge part of it. And the 3 children, as I say, in the late 40s and early 50s, all 3 came to work in the business. There was my father, Gene Still, his sister, Melba, and his brother, Tom. My father went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville and graduated with a degree in transportation, which was fairly new at the time, but applicable to the family business. He came into the business full-time in 1953. As we approached the 1960s, it took a different angle as some of our local industry had overseas interest. So we started doing international shipping. My father chartered a barge out of Miami and took the first tractor trailer that was on the island of Nassau. We had to get special permission from, at that time, the British governor of Nassau to take a tractor trailer onto the island. But we were moving families and equipment back for a local industry here, and it was what needed to be done. And this was how our small company could prove we could rise to the occasion and handle the needs of our local businesses for international shipping. During the 60s, other businesses in the area started to grow too. Univac with computers in Bristol, Raytheon, and we were hauling a lot of the specialized equipment and the rather large early computers that were manufactured there to the different locations where they would sell the computers. I graduated from the University of Tennessee in 1975, again with a degree in transportation and logistics, and came into the business full-time. I had worked summers all through school, as you do in a family business. One of my first projects with the business was to purchase wolf transfer and storage in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. The purpose of that purchase was so that we could move our friends across the line in Virginia from one place to another within the state of Virginia. And you have to have a permit from the Virginia Corporation Commission to do that, so that was why we purchased that business and added that to our menu of available services. The company in the 60s had started acquiring more properties in the area of our general campus. We built a warehouse on Charlemont Street in 1962, and in 1968 had built a large warehouse just for the international shipping. As businesses started to close in the area, we didn't want to run neighbors out, but when we heard someone was going out of business, we would approach them about purchasing their property if it was near our facility. So we ended up buying Fred Phillips Service Station on Boone Street, the American Cleaners Building, the Warner Cable Building, the Salyers Candy Company, and then 2 buildings that became available on Commerce Street to accommodate the growing storage needs of our industry and public at that time. The company continued to expand, and after my grandmother, Rachel, passed away in 1987, was owned by her 3 children, my father and his brother and sister. My Aunt Melba was very instrumental with the international and secured permits for the company to go into Ontario and Quebec when it became obvious that a local industry was expanding into that area, and to get the company certified as one of few movers, which is actually a U.S. customs broker, so that if we have a shipment come into Tri-Cities Airport, we can clear it at the airport ourselves and not have to have it sent to Atlanta or somewhere and go through a third party, which was an advantage for our customers. The business, as they continued to grow into the 90s, and we added a building on Cumberland Street that had been previously occupied by Junior Achievement to accommodate, again, the increasing storage needs. After 2000, my father and his brother and sister were beginning to age some. I lost my Aunt Melba in 2009, my Uncle Tom in 2011, and then my father in 2015. So I was the last family member standing in the business, and I had to do something that had never been done before, which was to hire people who were not family to work in the office. So it presented some unique challenges as we adapted with the changes. I had a pleasant surprise back 2 years ago when a nephew who had come and worked summers for me decided it was what he wanted to do full time. So now we have a fourth generation family member in the business, which it's nice to have some young blood in at this point and me not to feel like last person standing.